Question 1. Under California law, which of the following actions is required immediately upon discovering that a firearm you own or possess has been lost or stolen? A. Report the loss or theft to the California Department of Justice within 48 hours. B. Report the loss or theft to the local law enforcement agency within 24 hours. C. Report the loss or theft to the California Department of Justice within 5 days. D. Report the loss or theft to the local law enforcement agency within 48 hours. Answer: D. Report the loss or theft to the local law enforcement agency within 48 hours. Explanation: California law mandates prompt reporting of a lost or stolen firearm to help prevent them from being used in crimes. Specifically, you must report the incident to your local law enforcement agency within 48 hours of discovering the loss or theft. This requirement applies to all firearm owners and is a critical part of responsible firearm ownership to protect public safety. Getting this report in quickly is essential for both law enforcement tracking and protecting yourself from potential liability. Question 2. If you are applying for a concealed carry weapon, CCW, license in California, what is generally the minimum length of training required? A. 4 hours. B. 8 hours. C. 12 hours. D. 16 hours. Answer: D. 16 hours. Explanation: California law requires applicants for a new concealed carry weapon license to complete a minimum training course that meets specific standards. This training must be at least 16 hours long and include instruction on firearms safety, the safe handling of firearms, and the legal responsibilities of carrying a concealed weapon. The purpose of this extensive training is to ensure permit holders are thoroughly knowledgeable and competent in carrying a firearm in public. Always verify the specific training requirements with your issuing agency, as local rules can sometimes require more than the state minimum. Question 3. Under California law, carrying a loaded, unlocked handgun in the trunk of your vehicle while driving on a public street is generally considered A. Legal, provided you are not a prohibited person. B. Illegal, regardless of your status as a prohibited person. C. Legal, provided the ammunition is stored separately. D. Legal, provided you have a valid firearm safety certificate. Answer: B. Illegal, regardless of your status as a prohibited person. Explanation: California law strictly regulates the transportation of handguns in vehicles. Generally, a handgun being transported must be unloaded and carried in a locked container separate from the passenger compartment, or securely locked in the trunk. Carrying a loaded, unlocked handgun anywhere in the vehicle, including the trunk, typically violates state law unless a specific exception applies, like having a CCW permit. Proper storage during transport is vital to prevent unauthorized access and ensure public safety. Question 4. A Firearm Safety Certificate, FSC, is required to purchase or acquire most firearms in California. Which of the following individuals is typically exempt from needing an FSC? A. An individual who is over 65 years old. B. An active duty military member with proper identification. C. An individual who has previously owned a firearm. D. An individual who is purchasing a .22 caliber rifle. Answer: B. An active duty military member with proper identification. Explanation: While most individuals must possess a firearm safety certificate before purchasing or acquiring a firearm in California, certain categories of people are specifically exempted by law. Active duty members of the U.S. Armed Forces, as well as honorably retired members, are typically exempt when they present valid identification. This exemption recognizes their existing firearms training and experience. Knowing the specific exemptions is important for understanding when the FSC is required. Question 5. According to California law, what constitutes an unsafe handgun that generally cannot be sold by licensed dealers? A. A handgun that has not passed specific safety and functionality tests and is not listed on the state's roster. B. Any handgun manufactured before the year 2000. C. A handgun that lacks an external safety mechanism. D. A handgun with a magazine capacity exceeding 10 rounds. Answer: A. A handgun that has not passed specific safety and functionality tests and is not listed on the state's roster. Explanation: California law defines unsafe handguns primarily through a roster maintained by the Department of Justice. For a handgun model to be listed on this roster and therefore generally available for sale by licensed dealers, it must have successfully passed specific safety tests, including drop safety and firing requirement tests. Handguns not listed on this roster, unless specifically exempted, like curio/relic firearms or private party transfers under certain conditions, are considered unsafe handguns for retail sale purposes. This system is intended to ensure that handguns sold in California meet minimum safety standards. Question 6. Under California law, storing a firearm in a residence where a child or a person prohibited from possessing firearms might access it without permission is generally considered: A. Permissible if the firearm is unloaded. B. Illegal, unless the firearm is stored in a locked container or disabled with a locking device. C. Permissible if the firearm is stored in a location inaccessible to the child or prohibited person. D. Legal, as long as the child or prohibited person is aware of the firearm's location. Answer: B. Illegal, unless the firearm is stored in a locked container or disabled with a locking device. Explanation: California has specific safe storage laws designed to prevent children and prohibited persons from accessing firearms. If a firearm is stored in a residence where a child or a prohibited person is likely to be, it must be stored in a locked container or be disabled with a locking device to prevent unauthorized access. Failing to do so can result in criminal penalties, even if no injury occurs. Prioritizing secure storage methods like safes or trigger locks is a fundamental responsibility of firearm ownership, especially in homes with vulnerable individuals. Question 7. During the waiting period for a firearm purchase in California, what is the primary purpose of this delay? A. To allow the buyer time to reconsider their purchase. B. To give law enforcement time to conduct a background check on the prospective buyer. C. To ensure the firearm is properly registered with the state. D. To permit the seller to verify the buyer's address. Answer: B. To give law enforcement time to conduct a background check on the prospective buyer. Explanation: California law requires a mandatory waiting period, typically 10 days, between the date of purchase and the date a firearm can be delivered to the buyer. The primary purpose of this waiting period is to allow the California Department of Justice, DOJ, time to complete a comprehensive background check on the prospective buyer using various databases. This process helps prevent firearms from falling into the hands of individuals legally prohibited from owning them. Think of the waiting period as a critical safety buffer for the community. Question 8. Which of the following locations is generally prohibited for carrying a firearm in California, even with a concealed carry weapon, CCW, license? A. A public park. B. A privately owned shopping mall open to the public. C. Within 1,000 feet of the grounds of a public or private school, K-12. D. A restaurant that serves alcohol, provided you are not consuming alcohol. Answer: C. Within 1,000 feet of the grounds of a public or private school, K-12. Explanation: California law designates many locations as gun-free zones, where carrying a firearm is generally prohibited, even for CCW permit holders, with limited exceptions. Federal law and related state provisions typically prohibit the carrying of firearms within 1,000 feet of the grounds of a K-12 school. Understanding these sensitive locations, such as school zones, government buildings, and polling places on election day, is crucial for lawful carry. Always be aware of your location and potential carry restrictions before bringing a firearm there. Question 9. Under California law, what is the minimum age requirement to purchase or acquire a handgun from a licensed firearms dealer? A. 18 years old. B. 21 years old. C. 25 years old. D. 16 years old with parental consent. Answer: B. 21 years old. Explanation: federal law and reinforced by California law, generally prohibits licensed firearms dealers from selling or delivering handguns to individuals under the age of 21. This age restriction is in place to help ensure that handgun owners are mature and responsible. While there are some exceptions for certain types of firearms or transfers between immediate family members, the standard minimum age for acquiring a handgun from a dealer is 21. Question 10. You find a loaded handgun in a public park. What is the safest and most responsible action to take? A. Unload the handgun and take it home for safekeeping. B. Secure the handgun and immediately contact local law enforcement to report its discovery. C. Leave the handgun where it is and notify park authorities. D. Attempt to locate the owner by asking people nearby. Answer: B. Secure the handgun and immediately contact local law enforcement to report its discovery. Explanation: discovering a firearm in a public place presents a safety risk and a legal responsibility. The safest and most responsible course of action is to secure the firearm, without handling it excessively or attempting to unload it yourself unless absolutely necessary for immediate safety, and immediately contact local law enforcement. They are equipped to safely recover, process, and attempt to return the firearm to its rightful owner or dispose of it properly. Never take a found firearm home or try to handle it extensively yourself, as this could be dangerous or lead to legal issues. Question 11. According to California law, what is the maximum capacity for magazines acquired or possessed by civilians, with some exceptions? A. 5 rounds. B. 10 rounds. C. 15 rounds. D. 20 rounds. Answer: B. 10 rounds. Explanation: California law generally prohibits the possession, sale, manufacture, and import of magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition. This restriction is commonly known as the large capacity magazine ban. While there have been legal challenges and temporary periods allowing acquisition, the current general rule prohibits these magazines for civilians. Always ensure your magazines comply with California's capacity limits to stay within the bounds of the law. Question 12. When handling a firearm you are unfamiliar with, what should be your absolute first step, assuming it is pointed in a safe direction? A. Insert a magazine. B. Clear the action and visually inspect the chamber. C. Engage the safety. D. Pull the trigger to check if it's loaded. Answer: B. Clear the action and visually inspect the chamber. Explanation: when handling any firearm, whether familiar or not, it is crucial to treat it as if it were loaded until you have personally verified otherwise. The safest way to do this is to point the firearm in a safe direction, remove the magazine, if applicable, and then cycle the action to eject any potential round from the chamber, followed by a visual and physical inspection of the chamber and magazine well to confirm they are empty. This clearing procedure is a fundamental safety protocol to prevent accidental discharges from firearms you believe are unloaded. Always verify the firearm is empty before proceeding with any other handling steps. Question 13. Which of the following actions, if committed by a firearm owner, could potentially lead to criminal liability under California's safe storage laws if a child gains access to the firearm and causes injury? A. Storing the firearm unloaded with ammunition stored separately in the same room. B. Storing the firearm in a locked safe accessible only to the owner. C. Leaving a loaded firearm in a location where a child is likely to gain access to it. D. Providing a child with firearm safety training. Answer: C. Leaving a loaded firearm in a location where a child is likely to gain access to it. Explanation: California law holds firearm owners responsible for safely storing their firearms to prevent access by children. If a child gains access to a firearm and causes death or injury, the owner can face criminal charges if the firearm was stored in a manner where the owner knew or should have known a child was likely to gain access, and the firearm was not stored in a locked container or disabled by a locking device. Secure storage isn't just a recommendation, it's a legal obligation to protect children and others from preventable tragedies. Question 14. If you move to California with firearms you legally owned in another state, what is generally required within 60 days of establishing residency? A. You must sell or transfer all handguns that are not on California's approved roster. B. You must register all of your firearms, including rifles and shotguns, with the California Department of Justice. C. You must obtain a California Firearm Safety Certificate for each firearm you brought. D. You must report your firearms to the California Department of Justice. Answer: D. You must report your firearms to the California Department of Justice. Explanation: California law requires new residents who bring firearms into the state that they legally owned in their previous state of residence to report these firearms to the California Department of Justice, DOJ. This report, often done via the DOJ's online system, must typically be completed within 60 days of establishing residency. This requirement helps the state track firearm ownership within its borders. Familiarize yourself with the specific reporting process when moving to California with firearms. Question 15. When transferring ownership of a firearm in California between two private parties, what is generally required by law? A. The transfer must be conducted through a licensed California firearms dealer. B. The parties can complete the transfer directly after verifying each other's identity. C. The transfer is exempt from state requirements if it involves immediate family members. D. The buyer must possess a CCW permit, but no dealer is necessary. Answer: A. The transfer must be conducted through a licensed California firearms dealer. Explanation: California requires nearly all private party firearm transfers to be conducted through a licensed California firearms dealer, FFL. The dealer facilitates the transfer by handling the background check on the buyer, processing the necessary state paperwork, and ensuring compliance with the waiting period before delivering the firearm. This universal background check requirement for private sales is a key component of California's firearm regulations to prevent prohibited individuals from acquiring guns. Always use a licensed dealer for private firearm transfers to ensure compliance. Question 16. The 4 primary rules of firearm safety are often taught with specific wording. Which rule emphasizes being certain of your target and what is beyond it? A. Treat every firearm as if it is loaded. B. Always point the muzzle in a safe direction. C. Keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target. D. Be sure of your target and what is beyond it. Answer: D. Be sure of your target and what is beyond it. Explanation: The rule, be sure of your target and what is beyond it, is a fundamental safety principle that goes beyond just identifying what you intend to shoot. It requires the shooter to confirm that the area surrounding and behind the target is clear of people, property, or anything else that could be unintentionally struck by the bullet. This rule emphasizes accountability for every round fired and prevents collateral damage or injury. Always take the time to identify your target clearly and understand the backstop before shooting. Question 17. What is the minimum age requirement in California to possess a rifle or shotgun? A. 16 years old. B. 18 years old. C. 21 years old. D. 18 years old, but 21 if purchased from a licensed dealer. Answer: D. 18 years old, but 21 if purchased from a licensed dealer. Explanation: Under California law, the general minimum age to possess a rifle or shotgun is 18 years old. However, federal law, enforced by California, requires an individual to be 21 years old to purchase any firearm, including rifles and shotguns, from a licensed firearms dealer, FFL. This means an 18-year-old could potentially possess a long gun they received as a gift from an immediate family member through a legal transfer, but could not buy one from a gun store. Understanding this distinction between possession and purchase age is important. Question 18. Carrying a concealed firearm on your person without a valid California Concealed Carry Weapon, CCW, license is generally considered A. Legal, if the firearm is unloaded and secured in a holster. B. Legal, if you are on your own private property. C. Illegal, and is a crime in California. D. Legal, if you are transporting it directly to a shooting range. Answer: C. Illegal, and is a crime in California. Explanation: California law makes it a crime to carry a concealed firearm on one's person in public without a valid Concealed Carry Weapon, CCW, license issued by the state. The CCW license provides the legal authorization to carry a concealed handgun in permitted areas. Carrying concealed without this license, outside of very narrow exceptions like being on private property or transporting to a specific location like a range in a locked container, is against the law. Always obtain the proper license before carrying a concealed firearm. Question 19. Under California law, if a prohibited person, someone legally forbidden from owning firearms, lives in your home, how must your lawfully owned firearms be stored? A. Unloaded and stored in a location inaccessible to the prohibited person. B. Stored in a locked container or disabled with a locking device, accessible only to authorized persons. C. Stored unloaded, with ammunition stored in a separate location. D. Handguns must be locked, but rifles and shotguns can be stored unlocked if unloaded. Answer: B. Stored in a locked container or disabled with a locking device, accessible only to authorized persons. Explanation: California's safe storage laws are particularly strict when a person legally prohibited from possessing firearms resides in the home. In such cases, any firearms in the home must be stored in a locked container or be disabled with a locking device, and the storage method must prevent access by the prohibited person. This ensures that individuals who pose a higher risk or are legally barred cannot access firearms within the household. Taking extra precautions with storage is essential when prohibited persons are present. Question 20. What is the primary purpose of a firearm locking device, such as a cable lock or trigger lock? A. To prevent the firearm from rusting. B. To make the firearm easier to transport. C. To prevent unauthorized persons, especially children, from firing the weapon. D. To indicate that the firearm is unloaded. Answer: C. To prevent unauthorized persons, especially children, from firing the weapon. Explanation: Firearm locking devices are designed specifically as a safety measure to prevent a firearm from being loaded or fired. By securing the action or trigger, these devices make the firearm inoperable to anyone who does not have the key or combination, significantly reducing the risk of accidental or unauthorized use. Using a locking device is a simple yet effective way to enhance firearm safety when the firearm is not under your direct control. Remember, a lock is a barrier, not a substitute for safe handling and storage habits. Question 21. According to California law, openly carrying a loaded handgun in public is generally A. Permissible if you have a valid firearm safety certificate. B. Permissible in unincorporated areas. C. Illegal in most populated areas of the state. D. Legal, provided you announce your intention to carry. Answer: C. Illegal in most populated areas of the state. Explanation: California has largely prohibited the open carrying of loaded handguns in public throughout the state, particularly in incorporated cities and counties. While there are extremely limited exceptions, the general rule is that openly carrying a loaded handgun is illegal. This restriction aims to increase public safety by reducing the visibility of firearms in public spaces. If you wish to carry a handgun in public in California, a concealed carry weapon, CCW, license is the typical legal pathway. Question 22. If you are involved in a defensive use of a firearm scenario, what is one of the most crucial actions you should take immediately after the situation is stable? A. Leave the scene immediately. B. Unload the firearm and secure it, then call 911 to report the incident. C. Approach the other party to assess their condition. D. Place the firearm back in its holster or storage location without touching it further. Answer: B. Unload the firearm and secure it, then call 911 to report the incident. Explanation: following a defensive use of a firearm, your immediate priorities after the threat has ceased are safety and contacting law enforcement. Secure the firearm to prevent any further danger, ideally by unloading it and making it safe, and then immediately call 911 to report the incident clearly and factually. Do not leave the scene, alter evidence, or engage further with the other party. Cooperating with law enforcement is critical, and securing your firearm first ensures no further accidents occur. Question 23. When transporting a handgun in a vehicle in California, where must it generally be placed if it is not on your person under a CCW permit? A. On the passenger seat, unloaded. B. In a locked container separate from the passenger compartment, or securely locked in the trunk. C. In the glove compartment, unloaded. D. Anywhere in the vehicle, as long as it is unloaded. Answer: B. In a locked container separate from the passenger compartment, or securely locked in the trunk. Explanation: California law is very specific about how handguns must be transported in vehicles when not carried under a CCW permit. They must be unloaded and transported either in a locked container within the vehicle or securely locked in the vehicle's trunk. The term locked container excludes the utility or glove compartment. Following these transport regulations is essential to avoid legal issues. Question 24. What is the primary purpose of the Firearms Safety Certificate, FSC, program in California? A. To track all firearm owners in the state. B. To ensure prospective firearm owners demonstrate knowledge of basic firearm safety laws and principles. C. To generate revenue for the state government. D. To limit the types of firearms that can be purchased. Answer: B. To ensure prospective firearm owners demonstrate knowledge of basic firearm safety laws and principles. Explanation: the Firearms Safety Certificate, FSC, program requires individuals to pass a written test covering firearm safety laws and basic handling principles before they can purchase or acquire most firearms in California. The program's main goal is to ensure that new firearm owners have a foundational understanding of safe gun handling, storage, and relevant laws. Obtaining an FSC demonstrates a commitment to learning and practicing responsible firearm safety. Question 25. Under California law, which of the following constitutes being in possession of a firearm, potentially making a prohibited person subject to criminal charges? A. Having a firearm registered in your name. B. Having direct physical control of the firearm. C. Having the ability to exercise control over the firearm, even if not physically touching it, constructive possession. D. Both having direct physical control, actual possession, and having the ability to exercise control, constructive possession. Answer: D. Both having direct physical control, actual possession, and having the ability to exercise control, constructive possession. Explanation: in California, the legal definition of possession of a firearm is broad and includes both actual possession and constructive possession. Actual possession means having direct physical control over the firearm, like holding it in your hand. Constructive possession means not physically touching the firearm but having the ability to exercise control over it, such as knowing its location and having the power to access it, e.g., a firearm locked in your closet. Prohibited persons can be charged based on either type of possession. Question 26. If you are transporting a rifle or shotgun in a vehicle in California, which of the following is generally true? A. It must be unloaded and in a locked container, similar to a handgun. B. It must be unloaded, but does not necessarily need to be in a locked container. C. It can be loaded, as long as it is not concealed. D. There are no state-level requirements for transporting rifles or shotguns in vehicles. Answer: B. It must be unloaded, but does not necessarily need to be in a locked container. Explanation: unlike handguns, California law generally requires rifles and shotguns transported in vehicles to be unloaded, but does not mandate they be transported in a locked container, unless in specific sensitive areas like school zones. The primary requirement for long guns during vehicle transport is that they are unloaded. Always ensure any firearm being transported in a vehicle is unloaded for safety and legal compliance. Question 27. When handling a semi-automatic pistol, where should your support hand generally be positioned during firing? A. Wrapped around the strong hand's grip, fully covering it. B. Around the magazine well. C. Around the front of the slide. D. Forward on the frame or dust cover, supporting the strong hand. Answer: D. Forward on the frame or dust cover, supporting the strong hand. Explanation: the proper two-handed grip for a semi-automatic pistol involves the support hand wrapping around and supporting the strong hand's grip, with the support hand's thumb ideally pointed forward along the frame or dust cover. This grip provides stability, helps manage recoil, and keeps fingers away from moving parts like the slide or trigger guard. Keeping your support hand forward on the frame is a key technique for stable and safe shooting. Question 28. Under California law, what is the minimum age to apply for a concealed carry weapon, CCW, license? A. 18 years old. B. 21 years old. C. 25 years old. D. There is no minimum age specified in state law, but issuing agencies may set one. Answer: B. 21 years old. Explanation: California law specifies that individuals must be at least 21 years of age to be eligible to apply for a concealed carry weapon, CCW, license. This age requirement aligns with the federal minimum age to purchase a handgun from a licensed dealer. Meeting the minimum age is one of several criteria required for CCW eligibility. Question 29. When performing a function check on a semi-automatic pistol after cleaning or reassembly, what is one crucial step? A. Insert a loaded magazine and fire the weapon. B. Verify the safety mechanism operates correctly and that the trigger resets. C. Lubricate all external surfaces thoroughly. D. Point the firearm towards the ceiling and cycle the slide. Answer: B. Verify the safety mechanism operates correctly and that the trigger resets. Explanation: a proper function check after cleaning or reassembling a firearm ensures it is operating safely before live firing. This check involves cycling the slide, verifying the trigger resets properly, and importantly, testing the safety mechanism to ensure it prevents the firearm from firing when engaged. Always confirm your firearm is functioning as intended after maintenance. Remember to always perform this check while pointing the firearm in a safe direction and using only dummy ammunition or an empty magazine, never live rounds. Question 30. Which of the following is a key component of California's Unsafe Handgun Act, which affects handguns that can be sold by licensed dealers? A. A requirement for all new models to incorporate microstamping technology, as of specific dates/conditions. B. A ban on handguns made of polymer materials. C. A requirement for all handguns to have a magazine disconnect safety. D. A limitation on barrel length for handguns. Answer: A. A requirement for all new models to incorporate microstamping technology, as of specific dates/conditions. Explanation: California's Unsafe Handgun Act, which governs the roster of handguns certified for sale, has evolved to include specific technological requirements for new handgun models to be added to the roster. One significant requirement has been the inclusion of microstamping technology, when feasible and upheld in court challenges, designed to imprint cartridge cases with identifying information upon firing. This is a complex area of law that demonstrates California's unique approach to firearm regulation. Be aware that the roster and its requirements are subject to ongoing legal and legislative changes.